She then starts interviewing Ollie, despite the fact that she's supposed to be interviewing Gabe. Also, Ollie is still there, despite him insisting that he didn't want to crash their trip. I don't know what's going on either. I'm not sure that the author even knows, if I'm being honest. Hello and welcome to Connotation Points Video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books and discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read-through of Funny You Should Ask by Elissa Sussman. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Bonus Chapter 17. This is what has become of Trinity's blog, which is to say that rather than to make frequent blog posts, she'll send out an email newsletter every so often. The entire thing is basically a page of, I like to have an edible and then do a jigsaw puzzle, which, good for you. Why do you feel the need to tell your subscribers about this? She also details exactly how she does a puzzle, which is, doesn't everybody do jigsaw puzzles like this to sort everything by color and then work on the outer parts and slowly work your way in? I legit don't know why any of this was right, and forget about why somebody looked at this and said, hey, this is great, we should offer that lady a publishing deal. Am I talking about Channing or the author here? Yes. The answer is yes. Chapter 16. Despite the fact that at the end of Chapter 15, Ollie said that he was going to see them on the plane to Montana, the three of them stand around and make idle chit-chat about nothing. I don't know what's happening anymore. Anyway, the boys insult Jeremy. Channing gets annoyed by this behavior. I don't like him, Ollie says, determined not to be left out of this conversation. You met him once, I say, for 5 minutes. It was enough, he says. To be fair, the narration has yet to actually bring Jeremy onto the page. The only thing we know about Jeremy, we know because Channing told us about his behavior. And I don't like Jeremy either. When we do this book's signature sidetrack meanderings, Channing tells us about how she'd run into Ollie several times over the past decade. Once she was out for an interview when Jeremy had business nearby in a bookstore, so he'd tagged along. As Channing went to walk past some restaurant, Ollie had grabbed her. Jeremy had insisted that Ollie should take a copy of his signed book, but Ollie was like, I'm eating, I'll grab it on the way out. Jeremy wasn't sure that Ollie would actually do that and kept asking Channing for assurance that he would. Jeremy was the one who had all the clout in our community in New York. He was the rarely respected novelist. I was his puff piece writing wife. I'm still baffled over why she chose to stay with this self-important loser. And then I remember that she literally got famous because she wrote a puff piece about some celebrity. But her claim to fame has nothing to do with how terrible Jeremy is, so my point still stands. However, despite how famous Jeremy might be in New York, he still wasn't getting pulled aside by Oliver Mathis. Apparently, the reason why they're standing around and chatting isn't because the author forgot that they were supposed to be going to Montana. Oh no. The author forgot that Ollie told them that he wasn't going to crash their date. The three of them are literally in the air right now. He loves your writing. Oh, that's very nice of him, I say. Not nice, Ollie says. Honest. Paul has absolutely exquisite taste. It's why he married me. How good could Paul's taste possibly be when he thinks Channing's writing is by any means good? Apparently, when Ollie had come out, the only person that he wanted to drop that bombshell onto the world was Channing, which makes sense, I suppose. She already knew, and they already knew each other, even for the few hours that they were together. Ollie says that his mom loved Channing's article about Ollie being gay. However, this segs into Gabe admitting that he didn't like Channing's article about him. Despite my conflicting feelings about what it had done for my career, I knew that it was a good article. No, it was a fucking amazing article. It had been flattering and fawning and had made Gabe look like he was the only possible choice to play James Bond. It had shifted the narrative around his casting, and though it hadn't quieted all of the haters, it had certainly shut enough of them up. Egotistical much? Unless there's page after page of Channing hyping up that movie, I'm failing to see how Channing talking about going on that weird date with Gabe somehow convinced people that Gabe should play James Bond. That wasn't just my ego speaking. That was what numerous reviews had said. They'd pointed to my interview with Gabe as the reason they had gone to the film with an open mind. Okay, but why? What hasn't been shown in Channing's interview that made people want to do that? We're over halfway through this stupid book now, and we have yet to see Channing doing literally a single goddamn thing of value. And Gabe had hated it. Okay, but why? You cannot simply tell the readers things like this and then move on without actually explaining anything. However, now that Channing has had exactly one moment of egotism, she goes back to her default setting of feeling like a worthless fraud. The fact that the book even allowed her to have that moment was quite surprising to me. She gets up and moves to another row on the tiny plane where she sulks over how much of a fraud that she is and the fact that Gabe didn't even like her article. Remember, this launches her into thinking about how she had a lot of interview requests after the Gabe article came out. She did a lot of other handsome actors, and there was always an underlying current of why she was being asked to do these, but nobody actually said as much out loud. Until somebody named Dan Mitchell, who was in the second James Bond movie. He had done it at the place he'd been staying at and kept trying to get Channy drunk. Finally, after she kept skirting around his paper ploy thing to sleep with her, he finally and outright told her that they should go upstairs and do. I think you know exactly what he wanted them to do. It'll make for a great story. I can guarantee you that my is way better than Parker's. I had to read this and so do you. Channing quickly left the interview and wasn't surprised when, not even a week later, Dan's people announced that he was no longer going to be in that second James Bond movie. We jump back to the present. Channy listens as Gabe and Ollie talk, but literally none of what they're saying is important. She thinks about how the last time she was on a plane she was leaving Germany. She knew that going to New York and marrying that scumbucket had been a mistake. She knows that going to Montana with Gabe is a mistake along the same vein. The plane starts to descend over Gabe's hometown in Montana, a small place, one that's covered in snow. She has a weird sense of coming home to a feeling, a vibe, and it kind of scares her. Bonus Chapter 18. This is Channy's Vanity Fair interview with Ollie when he came out. I'm kind of angry that we're getting this rather than actual answers about what was so freaking compelling about her interview with Gabe. The snippet is a bit over 2 pages in length, and it takes that long simply to set up the point, which is that Ollie is gay. It takes us down a meandering path upon which Channy describes the blankets that they're sitting on, the weather, what they're drinking, and how it's almost Halloween. And it's not so much that it's bad writing. You've got to set the scene and everything, and I feel like she does a good job of it. And you guys know what's coming. It's the fact that we're in the halfway stretch of this novel and we're taking the time out to read an interview confirming stuff that the narration already went out of its way to establish to the readers. And we're sitting here learning about the blankets that they're sitting on. If I lived in this world where Oliver Mathis was a real person, I would totally be invested in the setup of this interview of tiny child Oliver going as Xena, warrior princess, for Halloween one year and finding the love of his life. But Ollie is a secondary character in a bad romance novel. The readers already know that he's gay. The interview cuts off right after Channy tells the readers that the reason why Ollie was cast as James Bond is because he's gay. And the worst part about this is probably the most interesting bonus chapter so far. I actually do kind of want to read more about Ollie's first love. But as I was reading it, I could literally see that the bonus chapter cut off in less than a page. And how could I possibly be invested in finding out how any of this turned out when it's likely that I'll never actually find out more? Chapter 17. They go to a hunting-themed restaurant for dinner. Channy is still upset about the realization that Gabe hated her article, yet he still asks her to come do another one with him. His ploy to get into Channy's pants is thinner than rice paper here. Channy's so miserable that she doesn't even care when she orders alcohol in front of recovering addict Gabe, which makes me wonder why she even came. She's been throwing a fit and acting like a petulant child since about 5 minutes after takeoff. Girl, go home if you're gonna act like this. She then starts interviewing Ollie, despite the fact that she's supposed to be interviewing Gabe. Also, Ollie is still there, despite him insisting that he didn't want to crash their trip. I don't know what's going on either. I'm not sure that the author even knows if I'm being honest. After a page of tedious interview questions that have literally nothing to do with Gabe whatsoever, Ollie apparently puts his foot in his mouth. However, the readers have no idea what's going on except the awkward and embarrassed way that Channy and Gabe respond to this. It's nearly half a page of awkward chit-chat before Ollie steps away, and the narration forces Channy to explain this. After finishing James Bond, Gabe did a Broadway stage production of A Raisin in the Sun. Channy had intended to avoid Times Square until the run was over, but she was sent a ticket for opening night. Channy knew that her marriage was in the gutter. The tabloids claimed that Gabe and Jacinda's relationship was heading for a divorce as well. She thought that her going would mean nothing, that Gabe wouldn't even notice she attended. During the intermission, an usher told Channy that Gabe wanted to see her in his dressing room after the show. She went and walked in on Gabe and Jacinda in a passionate embrace. She was somehow surprised about this to the point where she kind of wandered around and ended up on the stage. Gabe chased after her where they have the most awkward and insulted conversation. He said that Jacinda came to surprise him, and he's somehow upset about that, which makes me wonder, why the did you marry her then? Absolutely amazing decisions being made by all characters at every turn. Gabe tries to invite her to the after party with Jacinda and Gabe's mom. Channy is quick to call Gabe out on that and leaves after even more awkward goodbyes. I walked home feeling the same way I'd felt when I'd heard that he'd married Jacinda, like a deflated balloon on the bottom of someone's shoe, like I'd been played for a fool. I'm all for the idiots mutually pining over one another trope, but this ain't it. This is two people who clearly enjoy making themselves miserable for no real reason. I'm not quite sure when I tapped out of my sympathy for either of them, but it's long gone by now. To make matters worse, when Channing mentally returns to the present, Gabe again insists that Jacinda surprise him at the theater. Again, Channing calls him out and says that repeating this doesn't somehow make it better. He chose not only to get married to Jacinda, but to stay married to her. Apparently, Gabe had invited Channing to the opening of the play based off of two factors. You haven't written about Jeremy in a while, and Jacinda and I were never really, he gestured. It wasn't real. Did Jacinda know that? I asked. Rather than to simply ring Channing up and ask her out to dinner, he decided to do all of that. I can get on board with him presuming that Jeremy is out of the picture. He was barely in the picture to begin with, but I'm honestly drawing the line with cheating. He might claim that his marriage to Jacinda wasn't real, but holy, they were still married. At least start the divorce process, geez. He insists that their marriage arrangement was all Jacinda's idea, but again, Channing points out how terrible that Gabe is, that Jacinda had seemed surprised when Channing walked in. He admits that Jacinda hadn't known what had happened between Channing and Gabe previously when Channing walked into that dressing room in New York. Channing calls Gabe out on his cheating. He says that Channing was still married during that time as well. But I'd like to explain what's going on here. Channing got a free ticket to see an A-lister on Broadway. She thought that she might write something about it and publish it later. Gabe sent her the ticket with the clear intention of hooking up with Channing after the show. You do understand how one of those is way worse than the other, right? When the conversation between the two of them comes to an awkward standstill, Ollie comes back. He announces that he's pleased that since the two of them haven't killed each other, they can be trusted around the steak knives, so they should order. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main Snarks, then you can find even more Snark on my Patreon. You can access it for $1 a month. Members also get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snark so much that you want me to Snark your rating? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your rating is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just $10 per chapter. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of erotic short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys.